Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Koduah, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Autumn Rise Foundation. And welcome to our second episode of TeaTube. On this episode, we'll be discussing financial stability. And to help me get started, I want to introduce our panelists, Tadana Nagle.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tadana. Thanks for joining.
And also Charlisa Goodlet.
Hi, everyone.
So Tadana is the founder of Legendary Wealth Builders. It's a company which provides financial literacy and education, as well as money management tools designed to help millennials achieve financial freedom. And Charlisa is actually the founder of Broke Black Bougie. It's an online platform detailing Charlisa's personal experience with financial responsibilities, as well as supporting Black women with humble pockets and affluent tastes, i.e. myself. So before we get started, I do want all of our viewers and participants to know that this episode is going to be recorded and it's going to be made available on our public YouTube platform. And we'll also be using snippets of this recording for our Instagram and Facebook as well. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So right now, we're going to release a series of poll questions for our audience members to complete. And as we go through the webinar, we're going to review the responses and discuss any interesting things that we might find. So, ladies, what are some common misconceptions that people have surrounding personal finances and acquiring wealth? Tadana, why don't you tell us?
So I think one of the common misconceptions about acquiring wealth or finances in general is that you have to have a lot of money to get started. And that is definitely not true. You can start at any point wherever you are. You don't have to wait till you have a six-figure income or you get a lump sum of money in order to start saving or investing. The most important part is consistency. So whatever amount it is, try to stick with amount that you can continually invest or save every single month or every single week. I think that's going to be the most important aspect. So if you can only afford to save $50 a week, save $50 a week. If you can do more than that, $100 a week, then save $100 a week. But don't save $200 one month, 6 months down the line, you save another 300 months, a year goes by, you save another. Because if you keep it up consistently, before you know it, at the end of the year, you're going to have a lot more money because your money is going to be continually compounding and growing. So consistency is key.
That's actually really interesting because when I first started looking into investing, I felt that I definitely did have to have like $5,000 or something like that on the back burner before I started investing. I realized later on that you didn't, but I'm really grateful that you're putting it out there because it really isn't general knowledge for people. People really do think like investing requires like this lump sum of money that you have on the back end. So thank you for sharing. Charlisa, what do you think are some common misconceptions people have around personal finances?
I think people really forget how like our finances intersect with every aspect of our lives. Like money is definitely a generational thing. It's a historical thing. It's a physical, mental, and emotional thing. And if we don't take care of it, right, or treat it as like that friend or look at it as something that we consistently need to check in on and make sure that we meet our goals, we can run into issues, right? Not having money does create stress. It's been scientifically proven. And currently the state that we live in, you know, there are 8 out of 10 Americans have expressed not having money as a stressor in their lives. And another study has also reported that like when employees don't have financial stability, that definitely can impact their ability to show up and be the most effective individuals working in the workplace. So I think we have to be able to tie those things together and how it impacts our lives and understand our relationship with money since childhood.
That's all very true. Speaking of how important money is in acquiring wealth and especially building generational wealth, when do you guys feel that you came to understand the importance of acquiring wealth and also how important building a reputable credit score is? to Donna?
So fortunately, my mother always instilled in me the importance of savings and building wealth. Always. I think ever since I was a little child, I had a savings account. So by the time I graduated high school, I already had a pretty sizable account, and I didn't think that was a big deal. I didn't know that was a big deal at the time. And I always had a really good credit score. So a lot of times I would have a card with a sizable limit where a lot of people I knew didn't. And even when I, took that leap of faith and resigned from like my full-time corporate job, I still had excellent credit score. So even though I didn't have an income, I could apply for a credit card and still get approved for $20,000, even though I had, zero income at the time, because I had really good credit. So a lot of things I knew that I could do because good credit is really important. Whereas some people, they can't go in and get that loan, and they can't apply for certain things because if they run their credit and it's not good, then they're going to get declined. So as an adult, I realized how important good credit is, but I always knew the importance of savings like throughout my whole life.
That's actually amazing. I don't think I started a savings account until maybe 5 or 6 months after I started my first full-time position. So the fact that you were doing it from a really young age is actually really impressive to me, definitely.
Part of it, my mom was making me. Like,
parents. You definitely.
But I'm glad she did, because a lot of parents don't do that.
I can't. I'm like right now reminiscing on all the times that I would get money from like relatives or things like that, and my mom would take it and say, "Let me hold it for you." And it's kind of just like, I knew she was going to do something big with it. Like I know, I'm thinking of one specific time that I actually got $100 from a relative. I don't know for what, I really don't remember. But she actually decided to put it towards my swim lessons. And I was really young. So I was like, oh, so $100 covers my entire summer session of swimming lessons. And so it was kind of just like really interesting to me that for your family, it was definitely about compounding interest and like having it being saved in a bank and like acquiring wealth over time. And for my family, it was more of the, as you grow, you'll learn how to manage your money better, but your money is my money. So that's really what it was for me. Charlie, do you have any interesting stories to share?
Whew, girl, I do. And let me just say this, like, Tadana, your mother is gold, okay? Because that's no, she's there. Because something I really wish that I had growing up, So I grew up in a really working poor family, and being a first generation college student, I thought that like, oh, just because I would be in college, like this would resolve all the money issues that we ever faced, and I'm building a new path towards generational stability. And here I am, and things were going to be perfect. And so I got my first credit card, and I thought that it was going to be like a very smooth sailing experience until once you have those type of responsibilities. I had family who were like, oh, we need help with this, we need help with that. You don't want to leave your family hanging, but you get into a space where financially you can't afford to take care of yourself as a broke college student and take care of grown folks. And so that led me to being an individual that, I had a good credit score starting out, and then it started to dwindle. So when you know what it's like to have good and excellent credit, and then you go down to being an individual that has poor or fair credit, right? Your experiences are very different. And credit is so important because I made my mistakes. I made my mistakes around the age of 19, 20. And those experiences I had to pay for later on. right? And so now being at the opposite end of it and being able to speak freely about those experiences, I think it's very important to nip it in the bud early on, making sure that people have financial literacy, understand how credit operates for them, and being able to be in a place where they are financially stable, where they can have a credit line of 20,000, right? And be able to know how to handle those funds.
So all of this talk about cash versus credit, do you feel that having a fair credit score and a large amount of savings and a really hefty retirement fund is more important, or is having a really good credit score and maybe very meager amounts of money in the present, like how would you balance those two? Which one do you think is best?
So I can take that question. I think in terms of available cash, that you should always target to have at least 3 to 6 months of cash on hand, especially like if COVID has taught us anything, is that, you know, where the cash at? We need some money on hand. So I think 3 to 6 months is really good. To be honest with you, for a good portion of time, I had way more than that. Like I told you, I resigned from my full-time job. I was living off of savings for like, I'm still living off of savings, and I resigned almost 2 years ago. So granted, I have income as well, but I did not deplete that savings, and it's 2 years. Like, that's unheard of, right? I actually think that's too much. It was okay for me, but I don't think that you need that much savings. I think 3 to 6 months of savings is good. And then start investing, because you're leaving money on a table. Like, a savings account is going to give you, if you have it in a high yield savings, maybe like 2-3%. When I first opened up my savings account, I think I was getting like 6%. That's when Capital One was really popular and they was giving you like a good amount. Now it's like 2. But I think investing it would have grew so much faster. But it's giving me a security blanket, which is great, but it's not growing as fast as if I would have invested it. So granted, I'm still investing. I'm always investing, but I could have invested more. But it kind of like worked out for me. But I would suggest that, 3 to 6 months, and then if you have more, invest.
What I would add on, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Charlie.
No, what I would add on is, I guess my question would be, why does this person have so much money, right, in a fair credit score? Like, what is going wrong, right, with your finances that you have a fair credit score and all of this money? Is there a collection on your report? Is there too much? No, seriously. Do you have too much of a debt ratio in comparison to your income? Are there certain things you can chip away at in order to make your credit score improve, right? Because it's just like, I would think you would have a nice balance, right? A good credit score and some cash flowing. To have all of this cash flowing, I mean, what good is that going to do when you can't get approved for the best rates because your credit sucks?
Mm-hmm. So to talk a little bit on that, I'm actually one of those people that I very rarely put anything on credit. I like to buy everything outright. Like, I will go into the Apple store and I will buy a new phone right then and there, pay it all in full. I don't like to do monthly payments on cell phones. I don't like to do monthly payments on anything. I'm kind of just like, I will accrue however much money it costs, and then I'm going to pay for it. So I'm really that kind of person. And I do have like really good credit. But I'm definitely one of those people that I'm kind of just like, I'll just hoard all of the money until I could pay it off, because for some reason, for me, paying things off over a period of time just gives me anxiety, just because I never know what is to come. And most of the time, whatever I'm looking to buy, I just don't need it right away per se. It's not a necessity. So I'm kind of just like, if I can wait and just acquire the money to just buy it outright, then I'll do that. So that's usually what happens when I think of a person who has a lot of money and like a fair credit score. They just don't like engage in any behaviors that would, I guess, be very like risky towards their credit.
To add on to that, I know people who don't have a great credit score because they don't use enough credit. So I actually use credit all the time. I put everything on my card. Even if I do have the cash, because I want the points. For one, I want the points that the card is going to give me, because I want to be able to fly for free when I go on vacation. It's not free, right? Because I use money, but I feel like it's free. So I want to be able to fly for free. I want to be able to use it for discounts. I want to be able to get gift cards. So I charge everything. And I feel like it adds an extra layer of protection, because every time I charge my card, it sends me a text message that your card was used. So whenever I swipe my debit card, it doesn't tell me that. So I feel an extra layer of protection with using my card, because I know that when that card is used, I'm going to be notified immediately. But also I pay it off. So I use it for the points. I use it to increase my credit score, but I'm going to pay off the card. The problem comes when you don't pay off the card and you are charging way more than you can afford to. And that's when an issue comes in. And there has been times that my credit score spiked up past 800, and then I might have charged something crazy, right? Because I'm like, oh, I need this thing for $10,000, right? I'm not going to spend $10,000 out of my savings account to buy it. No way. And then it may temporarily drop my credit score. But once I keep aggressively paying it goes back up. So I personally do use credit, but I use it responsibly, right? Swipe responsibly.
So how hard do you feel it is to get your credit back up once you've made like an insane purchase? Like say you bought a car for, I don't know, 30 grand. I don't drive. I live in New York. I just don't drive. But if you have made a purchase, and I know most of the time people like they go to banks, and like banks usually like pay off the car and then you pay the bank back for the car payments. How do you feel that impacts your credit score? Is it like significantly difficult to get your credit back up paying off your car loan? Like, do you feel that, say you started off with a credit score of 750 and then you made a car purchase and now your credit has dropped down to 690. I don't know how much it usually drops. Please go ahead and use your expertise and tell me how much it actually drops. But once you pay off the car, now your credit score is at 730, but it used to be at 750. So do you feel that making large purchases on credit is really, or would you prefer, I know Tadana, you definitely prefer to use your credit, but would it be smarter in that sense to use cash? Because it just seems that, you know, like buying anything on credit kind of just like negatively impacts your credit score, especially if it's a very large purchase. Charlie, what do you think?
I definitely think it depends on how much credit you're utilizing, right? So if you have all of these inquiries, or you have multiple accounts that are open and they have large purchases, large lump sum, large amounts, you have to make sure that you're being wise with what you're doing, right? So for instance, for me, I would try to create a balance. Is this something that I actually need, right? I'm in Albany, but I don't have a car. I'm pretty sure if I got a car, my credit score will go up, right? Because I've been on an onward trajectory. And I don't have a lot of consumer credit. Like I don't. But it really depends on your situation, how much debt you have, of course, and how much how can I explain this? Like how much you're opening up within a little time frame, right? So have you been opening up credit lines back to back over that course of the month? Like you have to take those things into consideration in order to assess how that may impact you. Sorry, I was like going on around to get back, but yeah.
Tadana, I think that's really interesting. Tadana, what do you think about that? Because when you put a lot of things on your credit over a short period of time, doesn't that negatively impact your score? But you say that you use your credits for pretty much everything because points and benefits. So how do you go about navigating that?
It can definitely negate your score if you put too many things on credit, but it also depends on how much available credit that you have. So for me, to put $10,000 on a card is a lot because it takes my utilization rate for that particular card way up. So that's a factor in which they use to rank your credit score. So typically, if you have a card, you should not go over 30% of whatever your balance is. So whatever, if they gave you $10,000 limit on that card, you should not go over $3,000 on that card, or it's going to even more negatively impact your score. So typically, for most of my cards, for the most part, I try to keep it under that threshold. And I can because my balances are pretty hefty. But if you don't have a hefty, you know, available line of credit, you can easily go over that. But in that situation, 10,000 took me down because the limit may have been 10,000, then I use up the whole card all at once. So it was like, oh, well, but I needed to, not that I needed to buy what I bought, but I wanted to buy that purchase and I wasn't going to take it out cash. So I usually work hard to get back to that 30% range so I can have 60% available credit. So I usually work hard to get to that number. I aggressively tackle that card until I get back into that range. And usually my score will surely go back up little by little. And I'm not going to keep taking out a significant amount of debt on top of that for me to look like, what's going on here? What's she doing? She tried it. So I'm not going to keep doing that over and over again. It would be like an isolated thing. And then I'm making daily purchases on my card, which I'm going to pay back every month. Won't be on the same card though. Will be on a different card that I'm not incurring like a higher debt on that same card.
So do you open up credit cards across like multiple banks or retail stores? Do you have credit cards with any retail stores like Victoria's Secret or Macy's or anything like that?
I do, but only for the points. I usually want to pay those off in full every month because it doesn't matter how good your credit score is, they're still going to give you a 23% interest rate. So I'm not trying to do that. So I do have store cards so that when I come in, I can get rewards. I can get those $5 melons, those $10 melons, those 20% off. But if you don't pay it off every month, then you're kind of negating whatever that percentage is. Because if you gave me 20% off for this purchase and I don't pay it off and you're going to charge me 24% interest, then what was I doing? So you have to really pay it off so you can take advantage of it.
Charlie, how do you feel you've learned how to manage your credit better? Do you feel that it was really difficult for you to build your credit back to where it is right now?
It definitely is a process, right? So if you go from having a 750 score, right, to being in the 500s, you feel it. You can feel the difference. And that's simply because, sure, you make mistakes, right? But why does your credit drop so low, right? I tend to see a lot of times with like my personal experience and having to learn as I go, right, about my personal finances. When I faced the financial hardship, I was really afraid to be like, hey, this is going on right now, calling my creditors and being like, you know, can we work around this payment? Can we figure out, get me on a payment plan that will be beneficial, especially when you're a broke college student, because you're not making a lot of money. The whole world feels like it's on your shoulders, and family oftentimes, especially as a first generation student, you know, they feel like you've already arrived at a place that you're not at yet. So I think it's really important to be able to assess those things. And from my personal experience, it took a very long time. First of all, I had to get a job that paid me well so that I could pay back my debts, right? I moved to a whole nother town. Like I left my hometown, moved to another town to continue on to grad school. So that was a whole nother situation. And then I had student loans. I think the best train of action when it comes to credit is to just make sure you're on top of your game and you're very informed on your credit utilization. You're very informed on your pockets, how much money you have, right? How many bills you have to take care of. Just overall examining a budget and figuring out what's coming in and what's going out. And not living beyond your means, because sometimes we feel like, oh yeah, I can do this, I can make this purchase, oh no, it's going to be all right. And then we forget about those little things. And like when it comes to our personal finances, we have to be on top of our game and remember there are certain things you just can't forget about or be irresponsible when it comes to your finances, because it will catch up with you. So yes, it takes time, but I'm glad to say, you know, I'm over it now.
I'm glad you made it through, sis, because I mean, coming out of college and you just see however much you have in loans and the government hounding you every other day, or if you have private loans, banks hounding you every other day, it's really a lot. I am now going to be 2 years out of college, and I probably didn't really understand how important credit was, like, when I first got out. I always knew like credit is important. It's like this thing, this imaginary thing, and it'll help you later down the line when you're trying to buy a house. And like you just get so many great benefits from having a good credit score. So I've always made it a point to make sure I pay off all of my cards in full every single month. And within the past couple of months specifically, I've developed a specific plan as to how I feel that millennials in general should kind of just go about acquiring wealth. And I'm going to tell you all exactly what those steps are. And you guys should let me know if I should add anything. Are there other things maybe I should consider? So for me, the first thing I decided to do is assess my spending habits. So I eliminated everything that I didn't need. I have Netflix, but I had to get rid of Hulu and HBO. I do have a Spotify account, and what I decided to do was weigh the pros and cons of certain services, and I was trying to see if I could maybe combine costs. So for my Spotify account, you do get a Hulu service with Spotify Premium, and as well as HBO or Showtime. I forget which one it is, but I only really use Hulu. So that was actually one of the loopholes that I was looking for when I was trying to like downsize all of my expenses throughout the month, and also eating out. If anything, COVID has definitely made me realize that I eat out way more than I need to, because I was craving all types of food that I usually order from restaurants and things like that within the first week. I was just like, well, dang, I really do spend a lot of money outside, don't I? So assessing your spending habits and eliminating any unnecessary costs is the first thing that I usually do. And then the second is securing an emergency fund. So I have made it a point over the past year to secure 20% of my salary every single month towards my savings. And that's really kind of just, you know, should there be a global pandemic, I'm set. And I call that really like putting on my financial oxygen mask. So you kind of just got to help yourself before you do everything else. Can't really help nobody else if you don't have yourself set up. And then after then, I made prioritizing eliminating my debts one of the heavier things that I'm currently working on. So right now, all of my student loans are in forbearance, and I've been paying off that principal like a mad woman, just because I really do hate the interest that comes from that. So after you assess your spending habits, you got your emergency fund, you start working on paying your debts. And if you're tight on cash, I feel that maybe the best thing you should do is look for a second stream of income. So be it that's braiding hair, or maybe you want to start a job part-time, if you want to do any online services, tutoring, things like that. If you just find yourself really tight on cash, I just feel that another stream of income is really helpful. And most of the time it can be really easy. And after then, the big girl stuff is investing into the stock market. And if you're a badass, I say invest in private companies and real estate. But you guys let me know, what do you feel I should add, or is it a good plan for a standard millennial? Like, is there anything that you would adjust about it, Tadana?
I think all those things are really great plans, and I am like applauding you for doing this at the age that you're doing it at, because the earlier you start, definitely the better. What I would add in there to your savings is automation. I'm sure you may be doing it on autopilot, but if you have it a direct deposit from your banking institution to wherever you're saving it at, hopefully a high interest saving account, make it automatic so you don't even have to think about it, because you should be doing it first before anything else, so you're not like paying yourself with what's left. You pay yourself first. So just adding that to that, which you're probably already doing, but just make sure you're paying yourself first. Also, if you have a 401k at your job, I would say make sure you're taking advantage of that and funding it to the highest that you can. So if your company is matching you up into a certain percent, make sure you're taking advantage of that match and you're funding it to that total percent, whatever it may be, 3%, 5%, 6%. So I would add that in there, because it's just, you're leaving money on the table if you're not investing in your 401k. I would also say, definitely a side hustle if you can, but maybe you could even negotiate a pay increase at work, right? Maybe you can negotiate a raise if you can. I feel like a lot of times we don't think to request a raise, but think of all the great things that you're doing all year long and write them down. And when it's time for that end of year review, put it on them. Like, let them know what you bring to the table. Like, hello, I think I deserve a bonus for all this that I'm doing. So that's also good. And just adding to that, like if you get a raise or if you get a tax refund or if you get a bonus, just really saving them. That's how I really pay off my debt big time. Whenever tax refund comes around, whenever I get a bonus or a raise or some lump sum of money, I throw it right into any debt that I have. So I usually pay down debt a lot faster that way. So those are some things I would add to it, but all those other things were great.
So since you brought it up, I'm sorry, I had a slight disconnection. But since you brought it up, could you let us know, how does a 401k work out and how does that compare to an IRA?
So a 401k is a retirement account that will be offered through your place of employment. So wherever you work at, they would offer you a 401k. And a lot of companies will match you up into a certain percent. My previous job was 6%. So it's whatever 6% of your salary, they'll match you. So if that equals you paying $3,000 within that year, they're going to give you $3,000 to add to it. So you might as well take it because it's free money. Why not take it? Whereas an IRA is an individual retirement account. And this is typically an account that you take out for yourself at another financial institution. So any other financial institution, you can open up an IRA, and it could be either a traditional IRA, which is mean they take the money out of your account pre-tax dollars. So you get paid, IRA gets paid, and then Uncle Sam gets paid. Or you can have a Roth IRA where they take the money after tax, which means you get paid, Uncle Sam gets paid, and then your Roth IRA gets paid. So they're both tax advantageous accounts. It's just one is on the front end and one is on the back end.
So Charlie, from your perspective and your experiences, how do you feel that a millennial who is a Black woman would benefit from, say, a 401k versus an IRA? And let's also assume that this woman has a small business, so she's working a side hustle.
I think it's very beneficial, right? Because like Tadana said, you don't want to leave free money on the table with your 401k, especially when it's a retirement plan that is offered by your employer, right? If you ever have a question regarding what your employers can offer you in terms of retirement plans, or if you have questions about like your IRA, there are places at work which you can access that help. Like for me, for instance, owning Broke Black Bougie, and also being newly acquainted into the working world, I work for the state. And so the state has a really great retirement plan. They also offer a pension, and they also offer deferred compensation. When I first came in, there were elders who were telling me like, hey, you should really access deferred compensation. That's more money in your wallet. They may chip away a little bit at your salary, and you may see the difference now, but later that will help pay off with all of this compound interest, and depending on how many years you decide to put into the state before you become vested. So like for when you're a state employee and you're working for the state, you become vested after 10 years. But I say all of this to say that I think it's really important, because for me coming in, I didn't know a lot of this stuff, right? My mother didn't have a 401k. My father didn't have a 401k. And they didn't have really great salaries as well. So when I came into getting my first job, I worked at a nonprofit, and they didn't offer a 401k. They offered a 403, I believe, but their benefits were terrible, and I wasn't getting paid as much as I desired. And so I decided that in order for me to be able to reach my savings goals, in order for me to retire at the age that I desire, right, it was really important for me to be able to increase my income and actually find a better job with better benefit options. And so I was able to do that, landing as an analyst. And so, yes, I think that's very important. Yeah.
So we do have a question in from Brianna. She wants to know, for the IRA, how do you know if it's worth rolling over an existing 401k? And Tadana, is it possible to do both? Can you invest in both a 401k and an IRA account?
Yes, but they're usually not at the same not that they're not at the same institution, but usually if your job is offering a 401k, they're not offering an IRA. So I have both, because my job, well, now I don't have a 401k, I just have IRAs. But when my job offered a 401k, I was investing in that. And then I left that company and went to another company. So essentially that 401k is just kind of sitting there like an orphan, right? No one's taking care of it anymore. I'm not putting money into it because it's not coming out of my paycheck. My job's not putting money into it because I'm not working there. So it's kind of like, just floating there sitting. So I rolled it over into an IRA so I can continue to contribute into it. So usually that would be when someone would roll it over. You can roll over an IRA into a 401k if you had an IRA sitting there somewhere and now you're working somewhere else and you want to lump them two together, you can do that as well. But typically, I think most people roll over 401k to an IRA after they left a place of employment, and the account is just sitting in whatever financial institution they invested in, kind of maybe not being taken care of. So if you want to roll it over into an IRA so that you have a new advisor or professional looking at it, most people do that. Or if you want to self-manage, you feel confident enough to self-invest your own 401k, you could also do that.
Sounds awesome. I hope that answers your question, Brianna. So earlier we were discussing a bit about how Donna's mom was kind of just like a really large impact on her financial stability in general. And Charlie, you didn't really have a lot of support for financial advice from your family. In the poll, we did ask all of our viewers if they felt confident seeking financial advisement from relatives, and 80% actually said no. So what do you think about that? How important is it to be able to go to relatives and family and get some advice for finances? Charlie, why don't you tell us?
I think it's very important, but to a certain extent, right? So if you come from a family that doesn't have the best financial habits, generationally, your family may be known to struggle, right? It might be very hard to get the type of information you need from your family in order to succeed. Or you might find yourself in a position like me, where I had to screw up and have some financial hardships first before getting it right. I think that there can be individuals in your family that you can go to get help and seek advice. But I'm not going to say you should take it with a grain of salt, but you should also seek a professional and an expert who can help you. It wasn't until I faced my experiences that I reached out to a mentor who put me onto a financial advisor who really helped me to understand like my emotions surrounding my finances, how to unpack my childhood upbringing and how that intertwined with my finances, and how to set goals and really be able to achieve them, to prioritize my financial goals. So I definitely understand why 80% would say no. I just hope that through their journey, if they have children or if they have a family, or hell, even if they're just one person, that they're comfortable enough to talk about money, talk about the hardships that you go through, or even talk about how you're really great with money, because that helps to help other people with their journey. And I think in this society that we live in, especially in the Black community, we don't want to talk about finances because it is a taboo topic, or it's seen as a taboo topic, and it can make people very uncomfortable.
So being that you say that you should kind of like take it with a grain of salt if, say, your family doesn't have the best background, I find that really interesting because just generally people tend to learn a lot from people who have made mistakes. So in a sense, I guess, what would you consider to be the hard boundary between taking advice from family members who don't perform very well? They're kind of just trying to give you their retrospective advice based on mistakes that they've made, versus taking advice from them because you just need any type of information that you can get.
Okay, I want to be very clear. I kind of like stumbled over my words, but I said I don't want you to like, I don't want to say like take it with a grain of salt. Just be very cognizant of that. But to answer your question, I think you do learn from people's failures, right? That's my whole platform is based on my failures and my experiences. I think you have to pick and choose who you can trust and pull information from, right? I learned about finances and struggle, right? Or depression rather, like people who have a money depression. A money depression is actually a very real thing. Um, through looking at how my parents dealt with their hardships. And so I knew when we had money in the household flowing, I knew when we didn't have money, and I saw how that impacted their interactions with other people, how they showed up into certain places, how they would even interact with us with money. And although my father didn't talk about finances a lot, and my mother would be able to unpack certain things here and there with us, it became really important for me as I got older to be like, I'm facing this situation. I know it's very similar to what I went through as a kid. How can I move forward? And even if my mother didn't have the perfect answer, right, I was still able to learn something from it. So I do think I understand why people don't talk to their family about money, because they don't want to make those mistakes, or they don't want to find themselves, creating a cycle all over again. But I think it's extremely important to be able to understand your history, especially when it comes to finances, your family's history with finances, and how that can set you up in your future, right, when you're working towards generational stability.
Thank you for that. So Donna, being that you are the person here who has experienced having these conversations surrounding finances with your family, how do you recommend to people to have more of these conversations? How do you start having conversations with family members about finances in a positive light, where no one really feels kind of embarrassed or kind of, any type of way about talking about money? Because it's a very touchy topic, especially around family.
It definitely is very touchy. And I think it's still kind of touchy, even though my mom talks about it, she's still very private when it comes to the conversation. But I think if you can open the conversation up with maybe some suggestions, like, I heard maybe we should do this, or I saw an article, or I read a book about this. So maybe if you come to it in a way that I'm suggesting some information that seems like you're trying to be more helpful and not critical, maybe people would be open about it, and that you're suggesting something and not that you're telling them what to do oh, you should stop doing that because I read this and that's not good and you're going to be broke and whatever, maybe you should just suggest something from someone credible, because a lot of times people can't take advice from people that they know. So maybe let it sound like it's not coming from you because they may be more defensive about it. Let it sound like it's coming from someone else and you're trying to suggest something that may help them.
I think that's actually really important. Like, coming from a perspective of being helpful and not critical is definitely like a really good way to ease into the conversation a little bit better. So for all of you who feel really uncomfortable asking family members or relatives about finances, maybe that's a good method for you to go about it. So why don't we start considering some lifestyle considerations surrounding finances? So Chaz actually has a question for everyone. He says he's been a full-time freelancer for over 5 years, and his biggest issue financially is consistently setting money aside to save and setting money aside to invest in his business, like equipment. So what would you recommend on saving percentage and investment percentages for a full-time freelancer on a monthly basis? I feel that, Donna, you might be the best person to answer this because you also do work on your own schedule.
So now that I'm an entrepreneur myself, I think you should look back to see how much money you make on a monthly basis, because maybe it's the same amount, maybe it fluctuates, but maybe look at a 3-month period and see what's the average amount of income that you generate, and look at what all your expenses are. So add up all your expenses that you have personally, look up all the expenses that you have for your business, and see how much that is a month, and see if that average income over that 3-month period. So if you're bringing in, I'm just making this number up, on average $3,000 a month, how much are your expenses every month, personal and business? And does that income cover those expenses? And hopefully it does. And then see what is a comfortable number that you could say, I'm going to deduct this amount every month to put into a savings account, or like a solo IRA, which is an IRA for business owners, freelancers, or any kind of retirement platform or savings account, whatever you want to put your money aside for. And then hopefully you have a business account as well, that you're getting income that you could sort of reinvest back into your business. So just kind of finding a number that seems like it's not going to be too hard for you to continue to do every month. You don't want to put a number that's too big that, you feel like I can't keep this number up, but a number that seems comfortable after you kind of do the math.
Thank you for that, Chaz. I hope that answers your question. With other lifestyle considerations, how much more easy or difficult is it to invest in your savings or your retirement fund when you're single versus you have a committed relationship / you're married or you're supporting children? What do you think, Charlie?
I think first things first, like if you are single, right? And you're just solely taking care of yourself, or you might be single and you might have to help back out at home or give back to family, you should be able to budget in and prioritize certain things as they relate to your lifestyle. So like for me personally, even though I'm in Albany, right, I help out back home. So that's something that I have to budget in even as a single woman. If I was in a relationship, my money is my money and his money should be his money. We are not married. We don't need to be intertwining our finances. However, for some people, that is a preference for them. And protect yourself and do so accordingly. If you have a child, I don't have a child, right? But I do recognize that it's you, it's the little human, it's the household that you live in. And little humans come with their own expenses. I'm not going to speak on that behalf because I don't have a child. But if I did, I recognize that's an extra plate to feed, right? And other responsibilities that come with that. So I think you just have to take a full round assessment, whether it's quarterly, bi-weekly, or weekly rather, into your finances, what's coming in, what's going out, and what goals you're working towards in order to meet them.
Tadana, what are your thoughts on that? Kind of just reassessing your finances more frequently when there are more people to consider.
You definitely, I think, you probably should reassess it about the same. But I think when you're single, maybe not everybody's situation, but I think you have the best advantage when you're only taking care of yourself. I know that when I was single and I only had my income, I felt like, I had a lot of money because I only had to take care of me. So I think that's a good time to get really aggressive about paying off debt, aggressive about savings, aggressive about putting money aside for your future self in retirement. I know Charlie has a different situation because she still have to allocate some of her money to her family. Unfortunately, I feel like that's kind of like, what they refer to as the black tax, right? Like when you make it and you have money, then you have to pave the way for other people. Fortunately, I never had to send my mom money, so I didn't have to worry about that, but I know a lot of people still have to contribute to the family and the household. But I think ideally, if you are single, you should be able to use that money for you, but use it wisely and not just think this is the opportunity. I could just be flossing, going on vacations all the time, just buying all these extravagant items. Not to say you can't treat yourself, right? But you still have to think about your future self, because when you have more responsibilities, like you become a parent, you're not going to have that free income. I have 2 little broke roommates, i.e. my children, that I have to take care of on, as a single mom with just the funds that I bring in. So it's a lot, more difficult to spread that money around. But I'm always still saving and investing because I have that consistently ingrained in me. So even when I quit my job, I didn't turn off savings and investing. I didn't, call them up and say, I'm not working. I actually took it down, but I never turned it off. So I never turn it off. I just figure out a way to pay it. I may take it down. If I was saving 300, I might say, okay, I got to save 150, but I never take it to zero because I just keep the habit going. But it definitely becomes a lot harder. I used to eat out when I was single probably all the time. I cook all the time now, and I don't even like to cook like that, but I feel like I'm cooking like I'm like a West Indian woman over here, and I'm American. I am like throwing it down because I need to save that coin. So I'm not really extravagant. I still look cute, but I'm not buying all these clothes. I'm not buying my kids all these clothes. I have not spent a dime on summer clothes. I'm like, summer is canceled for 2020. Why am I buying clothes for Zoom? So it's like, I do try to cut costs where I can because it becomes a lot more difficult as your status change. And I think if you're in a relationship, you kind of, it depends on at what status you are in your relationship. If you're married and, the finances are together, if somehow you could live off of one income, if that's possible in 2020, I think that, or as much of one income as you can, you should try to do that and really try to like aggressively save or invest the other income if that's possible. Or just see, like you were saying, Michelle, cut back where you can cut back. You may not be able to have dinner out multiple times a week or go on 2 vacations a year, but it's all temporary, right? We're not trying to be frugal for the rest of our life, but we just have to determine what's really important to us and be able to cut back on those things that we can cut back on so we can enjoy those things that are important to us later.
So thank you for that. We're going to go ahead and speed up to one more section on this webinar because we're running out of time. But the last lifestyle consideration that I wanted to take into account would be people who run their own businesses and how filing taxes is slightly different when you don't necessarily, work under a different employer, or how it's a lot different because that you're your own employer. You don't have a 401k to invest in. You kind of just have to do that on your own. I also did ask a poll question for some of our viewers if they have a side hustle when it comes to filing their taxes. Do they file for that side hustle even if they make under $5,000 a year? And 40% of them actually said no. Is that something that we should be doing? Is it a good idea? Is it beneficial? Let us know. Tadana, what are your thoughts?
So if you are making above $400 with a side income or any freelance work, you should be filing taxes. It's also advantageous of you to file taxes. I know you may look at it like, well, I don't want to have to pay taxes on this money, but the tax laws are in favor of business owners. So it's more beneficial to write off to file business taxes because you can write off things and it be a deduction on your tax. So if you, say, for example, made $50,000 on your business or your side hustle, and you could say, oh, well, I had $30,000 in business expenses, whatever that may be. That may be dining out. That may be buying software, buying hardware, driving somewhere, travel, whatever it may be. You know, I had to take a trip to Florida and that cost me $5,000. You could write it off as a business owner. So that will take your taxable income from that $50,000 to $30,000. So that's going to behoove you to do that, right? Whereas if you're an employer and you make $50,000, you can't say, well, I spent $2,000 in traveling. No one cares because that's not your business. So you can't deduct those things when you're not a business owner. So if you have a side hustle or a business, it's in your best interest to actually file taxes, because more than likely it will decrease your taxable income because you have business expenses. And write them down, keep track of it, keep those receipts, as they could say, keep the receipts just in case, you know, Big Brother wants you to prove it. And as long as you can prove that you actually made those, made those purchases, then you're good. You made those purchases. I needed this for my business. I needed to take that trip to Florida to, see a potential client. Why not?
All right, we only have a few more minutes left. So Charlie, I do want to give you the last question that we have here. And the question really is, how do you consider it to be more difficult for Black businesses to get off the ground? Because there are like some studies and publications that do show that it's a lot more significant for Black businesses to get business loans to even start up their companies. So what are your thoughts on that? How is it much more difficult?
It's much more difficult because we live in a society that's rooted in anti-Blackness, right? And that has strategically made it hard for individuals to access opportunity and gain social mobility. In 2016, a study by the Stanford Institute of Economic Policy was able to identify that only 1% of Black business owners got a bank loan in their first year, in comparison to 7% of white owners. So at every level, I feel like when it comes to Black businesses being able to get funding for their organizations and be able to gain profit, it's hard, right? Is it impossible? No. There are Black-owned banks that have been known, I'll say Black and minority-owned, that have been known to do more in terms of supporting Black-owned businesses. And there are also mutual aid funds and other organizations like Fund Black Women that help smaller Black-owned businesses be able to gain traction or get the support that they need in terms of funding, investors, or people who actually want to help people start their business. During COVID, I saw a lot of Black-owned businesses starting GoFundMes or even PayPal pools, right, to get certain things started for their businesses, and they've done very well. Period, point blank. I'm not going to get into all of this Africana studies because we only got one minute left, but what I will say is this, right? Historically, it's been tied to an oppressive system, and capitalism is not going to fix everything that the Black community needs. But while we have Black-owned businesses, they need support. And it's extremely hard, but there are other avenues. There are Black economies that are supporting each other to help our communities elevate and serve our communities as needed. So I'll just leave it at that.
For that final thought. So to Donna and Charlie, I do want to thank you for coming on to have this discussion with us. I think that it was really beneficial, and I'm glad that we were able to answer some questions for our viewers. It was definitely much tighter than I would have liked. I really wish we had more time to discuss, so hopefully we can continue this discussion another time. And I want to thank we definitely do need to have a part 2. But I'm going to thank all of our viewers for joining us as well. And stay tuned for the next TeaTube. Thank you all.
Thank you.